the map of spirituality, which is the single most important map that you will ever encounter. It is a map through the whole universe. It is a map through all dimensions, through infinite amounts of energies, through hundreds of different emotions, through so many different mental, psychological states, and many different levels of consciousness. It is a map to your full consciousness, which is the absolute self, which is divine, which is God, the map to the source, to the self itself, to the source of all creation, to the source of creation beyond the universe. So it is the pure consciousness which is the destination. And the whole journey is outlined in this single one document, the most important map that will give you clear guidance of spirituality. Now, this is something that is not known. It hasn't been known for thousands of years. People were having so many different experiences of meditation. People were always asking the ultimate question, is that the end? Is that the source? Is that the place of God? Millions of people had so many experiences and they would not know what do they mean, to which level of consciousness do they resonate, and are they permanent or is it just a passing experience? So the map of spirituality gives a complete clarity towards the levels of consciousness, experiences, emotions, all the states of mind, spirit, consciousness. It is so clear and direct that many spiritual seekers come in shock because they suddenly see the truth. Some of the spiritual seekers, they realize that finally there is a map. Some of the spiritual seekers get very disappointed because they realize they're not even halfway through. So there are so many mixed emotions. But that is a clear truth which illuminates the path. Because spirituality is no longer a road into unknown. It is no longer a destination without knowing what is the next step, how to pass the ocean of spirit, the ocean of all higher dimensions. So it gives that shocking truth and clarity of seeing. Moreover, it is also scientifically verifiable with the fields of energies and the fields of consciousness, and applying the clinical kinesiology, to get the clarity to which fields a certain openness is, or to what degree the consciousness has expanded. So millions of tests have been done in the past to pave the way for the map of spirituality, and the key focus of this map of my teachings is for people from their very first spiritual opening right to the very last enlightenment. This is my key focus, where most of the attention is placed from the first spiritual opening towards the end of the journey. And here is the map in front of your eyes with all the questions, if you have eyes to see. Everything is on the map. There are 5 categories or 5 ways of seeing the map. There is on the left side the category of self-identification. The next category is location. In the middle, it is the dimensions, vibrations, and colors of energy fields and dimensions of the universe. On the right side, there are levels of consciousness from the very bottom to the very top. And on the right side, it is categorized in 3 main parts, which at the bottom is the victim abuser consciousness. From the scale of 0 to 200, in the middle part is self-empowerment between 200 and 400, and the self-realization from 400 right up to 1000. Looking at the left side, self-identification, we come to see that there is the lower self, which is the realm of the ego. The lower self dominates between the levels of 0 to 200. The realm of the lower self and the realm of, relatively speaking, or the religious way of seeing, the hell and purgatory. So that is the domain of the ego, of the egoic mind, of the egoic identification, and of the egoic energies, feelings, and inner identifications. As we come up, we see a place which is called in between, and it is the place of the rational, linear self. It is a place of thinking, the realm of thinking and understanding in a rational, linear way. One thought follows another thought and third thought and comes as a train. It is the linear way of rationalizing and seeing the reality as past, present, future, where present is only part of that stream of mind of past, present, future. It is not the real presence, it is just a passing stream. So the mind has no capacity in thinking to understand the present, because it is seeing it as another continuum of the linear timeline, past, present, future. The real present is the vertical dimension of now. It is not linear, It is vertical and whole, holistic, whole and complete. As we see from above 400s, it is a place of paradise, and this is where the higher self, higher consciousness opens. So this is what is termed as the first spiritual awakening. The first spiritual awakening. Connecting with your higher consciousness, which is your higher self. That is very important because your higher self is you who is in the fifth dimension, and it is you who is completely aware of all your past lives, completely aware of this life from the moment you were born till now, and is completely aware of the most probable future lifetimes and events. So the higher self, your higher self, is the source of wisdom and knowledge, because he or she knows everything about your past, your present, your future. Coming to the fifth dimension, it is termed to be the first heavenly realm, and they go up to the 12th dimension, so there are many heavens, many heavenly realms, and that comes through the higher self expanding to the planetary self. So you see how the consciousness expands from a very rigid egoic sense of self. It expands to the openness of understanding, the openness of mind. Then it expands to connectedness with the higher self beyond this lifetime. So there comes a realization that you cannot die, you can only change your body. So there is no death, and that great fear is relieved. So through the higher self, you start connecting with past and future timelines. Then a great expansion occurs towards the planetary self. So your consciousness expands to connect with the planet Earth and to feel the nature spirits, the animals, the trees, the mountains, the rivers. So complete oneness, connectedness with the whole Earth, planetary consciousness. Very commonly known are the shamans who would be able to speak with nature spirits and mountains and rivers and eagles and bears and so forth. So that is a very typical oneness planetary consciousness. The consciousness further expands to become cosmic galactic consciousness. So you see we're expanding further and further into a bigger field of energy and consciousness. Galactic cosmic consciousness, very commonly known as presence, the real present moment, the real presence, or the I am presence. In the middle you can see it's the I am presence, starting 600s. So that is the place of the glorious galactic cosmic self, which is also known as a Christed consciousness. So you see, Jesus was Jesus the Christ. So Jesus was the name of the person but the consciousness was Christ. And in Hindu there was Krishna. Same, Christ, Krishna. It is the consciousness, the galactic cosmic consciousness. And therefore that is a very huge surrender or a very big crucifixion of the ego self, of the limited self. So that is also known as becoming the king of heaven and becoming one with the whole galaxy as the galaxy, cosmic consciousness. As you know, our galaxy has 100 billion planets, 100 billion other planets. So many stars, and it's so big, it's so vast. But consciousness doesn't stop there. The universe doesn't stop there. The next step is the actual universal self. So your consciousness expands to become one with the whole universe, with all these hundreds of billions of galaxies. That's how big it is. So your consciousness then connects with the whole universe, with the universal mind, with the universal quantum field, and that is named as the first enlightenment. As the first enlightenment. From 700s, then there is 800s, which is the supracausal self or the divine self. And that then progresses towards the 900s. In between are actually the truth body, truth self. And 1000 is the absolute self. It is God, consciousness itself. So the 1000 is the final destination, which is the source of the universe. The source of light from which Big Bang came, and there are, by the way, many other universes too. Because universe means from Latin uni, one, verse, version. One version of reality. There are many, many more other universes, and the scientists are already catching up and postulating and finding some evidence, trying to find some proof that there are other universes. In the middle part, we see the vortex with different colors. You may see they resemble the colors of your chakras, from the very root, which is the first dimension, to the orange, second to the third, which is yellow, your solar plexus. The fourth dimension is of the heart, the green color. And the fourth dimension goes into the blue color, where the inner light fully opens. The fourth higher dimension is the dimension of the inner light, the dimension of light and the speed of light and the realm of the relativity. So these are very important things, and this is the map. And to expand on every term, we would need to go a lot deeper. What it means, the speed of light, and what is the relativity. And is there a place beyond relativity, beyond Newtonian science and quantum physics? So the fourth higher dimension is the realm of light, inner light, and it is governed by the speed of light. So I will make one clarification or one hint that from the speed of light, the fourth and third and second and first dimensions were created. You see, at first came the Big Bang, and then it expanded to create the subtle dimensions, the subtle spaces. And as that light was expanding and growing, it started to form different shapes, different forms, galaxies, and started to slow down. Yes, as it expanded, it started to slow down and to densify. So the light started to densify, and then it reached the limit of the speed of light, and from the speed of light there came the matter, the etheric matter, and then the physical matter, the fourth dimensional etheric matter and third dimensional physical matter. The second and third dimensional realms of more primitive life forms and minerals, the plants and minerals and stones and rocks. So the light from the Big Bang, it expanded, it started slowing down, and it started to densify, becoming solid. And this is where we are, at the bottom of the cake, at the crust of the universe, which is the physical realm, which is the foundation or the base, the matter, where everything we experience is physical in form. But however, we already know we are multi-dimensional beings, because our emotions are fourth dimensional, they're not physical, and our thought forms are of all the other higher dimensions. So we already will come to realize that we already operate in many dimensions of the universe already. So as we go up from the 400s, inner light awakening, it's the first spiritual awakening, or the first awakening of consciousness. And that is called the new humanity consciousness. It is where humanity as a whole is awakening now, bit by bit, one by one, but it is accelerating, so that humanity will soon, as a whole, will awaken to the light of truth, to the inner light awakening. The fifth dimension is the higher one. There is I Am Presence, Enlightenment. There is the void. You can see the black color in the middle, the void, which is the dark matter, which is the matter of the whole universe. Matter is not so correct term, or the dark energy, which is basically the whole mass of the universe. What is manifested in all these dimensions is the manifested or the birthed universe. So we may call this void as a womb of the manifested universe. A place, a womb from which the universe came. So the scientists can clearly see this void, this dark matter, and they know that from that place the galaxies come. The new galaxies are born. The new white holes and black holes are born. And beyond that, it is the source, the white light, or the lightless light as I call it. It is the source itself, or God consciousness. Now we have the numerical scale from 0 to 1000. And this is a very, very important part. These are permanent states of consciousness, or simple language speaking, these are normal states of consciousness. Now, what is normal to one person is not normal to another person. So on the same bench, you may have one person sitting in hell, another person, a normal person, and third person, an enlightened person, sitting on the same bench. So physically they're sitting on the same bench, but they're in completely different states of consciousness. So what is normal is completely different. So at the very bottom we have the shame, guilt, despair, grief and fear. These are the states, the permanent states of humanity who are living to barely survive. So they may be people in Africa, in Afghanistan, in war zones, when there's a huge lack of food, starvation. So they're experiencing the basic primitive survival consciousness. And that is normal to those people, unfortunately. As we go higher, then there is a place of desire, anger, and pride. Now here we will find quite a lot of Westerners. Quite a lot of Westerners are living in the anger consciousness. Primarily they would be of much older generation, and for them everything would be bad. They would complain every single step on the way. Everything is bad, nothing is good, they always find something to blame, nothing is right, and it's everybody else's fault, and they think they know it all. So surely you know one or two people around you. They're not that common, but there is one or two people around that everybody knows. And nobody really likes them so much. So that is the permanent way of anger consciousness. Pride consciousness is much more common because that is the materialistic consciousness. That is a place of deriving identity from materialism. Whether that would be your new car, your new house, your new handbag, or your new muscly body, or your new pretty hair. If you derive the sense of identity from the materialistic objects, of which your body is also an object, material object, biological, so that is the pride consciousness. And you may find many more people living in that place. Unfortunately, the media is very heavily focusing on that aspect of advertising, that all the women need to look like this, all the men need to be rich, and the women need to be pretty. That's the stereotype. And this is where all the media advertising is going. So unfortunately, the political, economical, governmental, social systems, they all are designed to support that consciousness, to support the lack, the limitations, the needs, and that you need to earn money, to spend money to be happy. So you need to earn money and then to spend money to be happy. And when you earn money, then you need to spend money to heal your health. So you are constantly in the same loop, never-ending cycle, which is called, the rat race or the never-ending cycle. That one thing follows another thing and the happiness never comes. And a very stereotypical way of understanding is that we seek happiness by, as we are young kids, we want to grow up to be happy because we want to have those freedoms. Then we want to go to a nice university to be happy. We go to that university to get a good job. When we get a good job, then it's all about the money. Well, then we find out that we need perhaps to get married to be happy. And then we find out that even marriage after a few years doesn't make us happy at the end, so we want to have children to be happy. When we have children, then we realize that we want children to grow up and be happy. And then we want children to go to university or college to be happy. And then we find that the children have grown up, that our marriage is already there, and the happiness is still not here. And then we say, okay, so now all we have is the memories, a few memories of the past, and maybe the retirement will give happiness. And of course, when you're retired, there are other problems, there are other diseases, and then you find out that maybe the next life will be happy. So that is a never-ending searching for something which is not real, because you're looking in a wrong place. Now, I'm not saying that all of these things are not important. The happiness comes from inside, and all other things are the living with balance. With relationships, with children, with work, with finances. It is finding the right balance of all of these things, but ultimately realizing that happiness, peace and love is the inner journey. It is the inner opening. This is where we need to find it, and this is where we can surely find it. So the pride consciousness is very tricky and very enclosed. There are so many limitations. This is why it still falls under the category of victimhood, because there is never real happiness. You're always being victimized by the next thing. The courage is the very important point, because that is a place of self-empowerment. When we come to a consciousness of courage, then instead of life giving you constant struggles, you want to do something, but there's always some problem not allowing you to do it. There's always something preventing you from doing something. So when you shift to the consciousness of courage, this is where life starts to support you. Life starts to uplift you. Then there comes a place of neutrality where we can say it's the river of life. Life is, when life becomes kind of okay, and it just flows. Neither good nor bad, life is okay and it just flows. So this is neutrality. Many Western people are living, simply living, neither good nor bad, just flowing. The further step from neutrality is optimism. So optimism is already an inner feeling where naturally we're optimistic. We're optimistic that things are going to be good. I know there are many things I can do, and I know I can achieve some things, and there is a natural inner sense of optimism. The higher place is called acceptance, which includes forgiveness, letting go, and transcendence. So that is a place where we truly start to accept life as it is, with all the challenges. We can forgive all of those who have hurt us. We can let go of all emotions accumulated. And we already start to meditate to transcend the mind. So we come to realize that there are practices to let go emotions, to make the heart lighter, and ready to step away from the mind to find a place of inner peace. So that is the place, the consciousness of acceptance. The next step is inner light awakening. So inner light awakening is when that light within you opens up fully. And that is the first real, complete spiritual awakening. This is where your life drastically shifts into the light. You feel a great sense of relief, a great sense of joy, a great sense of lightness, and suddenly there is this huge light which illuminates you and which gives you the strength to overcome the fear. So as the big amount of fear is already released. The fear and the darkness or the heaviness is released so that the light opens up. So this is the first spiritual awakening where you not only see the light, but you fully open that light. So you put you inside you ascend to the inner light, which is the inner paradise, the fourth higher dimension. From that inner light opening, the next step is inner wisdom. Because wisdom is knowledge from within, and now you start receiving all your answers from inside you. There's no more looking outwardly, because you know you will find everything inside you. So this light heals you, supports you, and gives you all the inner answers that you need. Very commonly people experience so many synchronicities, repeating numbers, everything falls into place in the right time, so life really starts merging and saying, now you are on your path, on your soul path. So with that inner light awakening, life really shows you very evidently that now you are on a direct inner path. The next step is the second spiritual awakening, which is called inner love. This is where we have to surrender all our knowledge, all our mind, understandings and wisdom to the higher consciousness of love. That is the unconditional love. The unconditional love, the inner love, where the spiritual heart opens completely. It is the awakening of the spiritual heart, of the unconditional love within you. So this is where you ascend to heaven within you. So that is the real ascension, the inner ascension, and entering heaven. This is where you complete your Merkaba, and you complete your light body, the body of light. This is why with the body of light, you ascend to heaven. And heaven is not only open, now you completely ascend there, and your spirit, your higher self, is permanently in heaven. So if something would happen you physically, it doesn't matter, you are already in heaven. All the doors, the light body is already there. So this is a really, really important step, and this is the goal number one of every human being, to open the light body to ascend to the heaven, to the heavenly place. Then you literally don't need to worry about any past or future. If you die, it doesn't matter, you go straight to heaven. So you will live eternal life with your light body. So that is really, really important step. And there are hundreds and hundreds of people in our community who have completed that step, who have fully completed that ascension. So that is the second spiritual awakening. As we go up, there is the consciousness of oneness, where I mentioned about a usual way of shamanism, but in reality, anybody can do that, to feel connected with the earth, to feel completely one with the earth, with the nature. So, with the opening of inner light and inner love, then naturally you feel so much connectedness. This is where joy becomes very evident every day in your life, and this is where the mind attains a sense of serenity. So the mind already goes through the light and wisdom, love, and the mind falls into serenity and tranquility. So that is the oneness consciousness. The third spiritual awakening is presence. Now that is a lot more difficult than any other further steps. Because let's say out of 1,000 spiritually awakened people, statistically only 5, maximum 10, would manage to make it to presence consciousness, the cosmic consciousness, fully. So out of 1,000 people, only 5 to 10 would make it to that consciousness fully, to become cosmic I am presence fully. Because it is so radically different than the other states of consciousness, of love or light or oneness. It is so radically different. These are completely different practices. And this is why very, very few truly know how to get there. So that will be the future of humanity in the next 500 years. When in the next 500 years, the humanity will evolve and grow towards that cosmic self, cosmic galactic human beings. So that is a lot more advanced, and this is called the spiritual maturity. The third awakening and the spiritual maturity. So that is already a lot more advanced state, and in our community there are about 20-25 people who have made it through. That is a very big number, in the last few years literally. So it's a very big number, and because we know exactly the practices, the right ways of how to get there. And it involves transmissions, it involves very specific practices, advanced spiritual practices. As we go higher, the non-duality is where the dual energies falls away. The positive and negatives, the masculine and feminine, the all duality starts falling away, and therefore the non-dual Advaita consciousness opens up, which I call a pre-enlightenment consciousness. And this is where usually people would be already spiritual teachers, but now it is becoming more commonly awakening due to the effectiveness of teachings and availability of books and videos and many more spiritual teachers stepping forward. Currently on Earth there is around 1,000 people in complete non-dual consciousness. And in our community there is about 9-10 people already there in that advanced non-dual consciousness. The 700s is the first enlightenment, universal consciousness. The 850, divine grace and divine love union, it is the divinity and it is the second enlightenment. The third enlightenment is 900s, supracausal truth, and 1000 is the full consciousness, the complete final integration of enlightenment. And this is where there is so much clarity knowing these steps, and there is so much confusion in the spiritual scene of people of not knowing where they are and where particular teachers are. So when people come to know this map, they suddenly come to me with 100 questions and 100 pictures. Where is this person and that person and that person? Where is this teacher and that teacher and that teacher? And then they find a lot of shocking truths. But as they come to understand what are the differences of these levels of consciousness, they start to truly understand what even specific spiritual teachers were teaching. So some of the teachers are speaking about presence, some of the teachers are focusing on non-duality, some teachers are speaking about awareness. They have their terminology, and that terminology relates to their specific levels of consciousness. And there are very, very few who have attained the complete full consciousness. And currently there is about 50 people only on Earth. And 2 of them are in our group right here. So that is very, very special. And there are many more people who are getting ready as well. And we work very closely together. So that is possible, that is available. It is not easy, especially from 600s up. It is not easy, it's very challenging, but it is possible. Everything is possible. In the right way, with the right teaching, everything is possible. So this is the complete clarity of the consciousness and the spiritual realms, all the universal dimensions, energy fields, and every level of consciousness would require a different seminar in their own. I could expand for hours upon every consciousness, every level, every step on the way. Every different level of consciousness have completely different practices, completely different teachings, completely different books to read and videos to watch, and physical exercises, breathing exercises, meditative practices to do. So literally it is the university of the universe. where every step is a completely different reality that you open up to. Okay, very well. Any questions? Yes?
It's a simple question. Like, I sometimes I feel heavy of the
Yes, yes, yes.
How can I stay?
Yes.
Like,
As I said, every person has their normal consciousness. When you meditate, you go higher, and when you have a challenge, you go down. But when you're normal, that is your normal level of consciousness. And by doing practices, very specific meditations, breathing exercises, so forth, then you start uplifting your permanent vibration higher. And now that place becomes new level of consciousness. So when you meditate, you will go even higher. When you have challenges, you will go down, but not that down anymore. And it is like a vortex going up. So you are at one place of consciousness, and then you spiral up, you arrive at new place of consciousness. You have more access to the higher states, and your lower bottoms are not that low anymore. And as you go higher, everything shifts higher up. Everything comes higher. So this is how we shift permanently our vibration to a higher state, and we can still experience the higher states, the lower states, but our normal, new normal is already on a higher place. So that was a good question, and that is very important to clarify it. Even more so, every level of consciousness is scientifically verifiable. Now that is a big thing what I'm saying, and what I'm saying is backed by 40 years of scientific research and millions of calibrations, kinesiological calibrations, bioresonance calibrations. Millions tests were done to arrive at the precision of knowledge of these states of consciousness. Most of the research was done from the 0 to 500s, to 600s, sorry. Most of the scientific research. The very famous person who has done most of that research, his name is David Hawkins. He wrote some books and did millions of tests to arrive at these very precise calibrations. And in my part, I extended in these 5 categories the scale of consciousness, and I brought a lot more clarity of what is above 600 to 1000. Because my primary focus is to bring people to the awakening, which is very simple, and then from that first awakening, my real goal and real purpose is to bring people to complete enlightenment. So I took that work of 40 years to a new level of the higher steps of consciousness. And this is why we have so much success and so many people awakening, because it is so clear, it is so evident, and now there have been thousands and thousands of people in our events and all having meditative experiences and questions, answers, where I could see precisely where they are, where every single person is. And if you go on the website, Map of Spirituality, you will see that there is a section about the personal charts. So within these personal charts, we make the measurements of your level of consciousness, the openness, your connectivity with your soul, the density of your mind, your heart, your physical body nervous system. So how your physical brain nervous system is attuned to which dimension and vibrational level, and most importantly, your complete realization. What is the level of your complete realization of reality? So these charts, we do them when we meet privately, and every few meetings we update those charts to see the progress. And this is where many people get shocked in a very positive way or a very shocking way when they see the truth. And mostly the ones who would be shocked are the people who have done so much and didn't arrive to a higher place yet. So they realize that these efforts of many years and even decades did not bring the fruits yet. And when they come to our meeting, then in 1 or 2 meetings, there is a huge blast of opening. And immediately they're on a new place. So that comes to the extreme precision, directedness, and knowledge. And most importantly, the clarity of seeing, direct seeing. So the map of consciousness, spirituality comes together with the personal charts where we verify the progress and every true realization of a person where they truly are in a permanent way. Okay, very well. So you will come to realize that the work that we do, it always comes to be referenced with the map of spirituality, with the levels of consciousness. At the same time, we always design the practices which are individual, which are individual for you, because there is very different practice for somebody in 300s and for somebody in 600s. These are completely different practices. But then we don't exclude anything, because in general meetings and satsangs, we speak of the highest truth that everybody can relate. So then, when we come to a satsang, which happens every Tuesday, I usually speak directly for all levels of consciousness, so that every person can taste, understand, and tune into even the new place of understanding. So there is never a limitation of any sort, because sometimes when you listen to the higher truth, it may click and resonate inside you. Some people may be sleeping bears, They've been ready for so long and they were waiting for that moment of truth. And suddenly they wake up. So the awakenings happen in very different ways, that some people awaken very gradually, step by step. Some people jump 100 points up. Some people jump into even 200 points up. So the awakenings really vary depending on every person and on the inner readiness and on your soul, you may say, and your past life merits. So everything is important for those awakenings to happen.